Good evening, everyone. I'm Kurt Soller, the articles editor for T, the New York Times Style magazine. I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's Times Talk event, the first ever with T magazine in celebration of our annual culture issue, which was released this past weekend. This year, we dedicated the entire magazine to a project that we called America 2024, for which we asked 15 playwrights to write original scripts imagining our country 5 years into the future. If you haven't seen it yet, there will be copies in the lobby for you to take following tonight's conversation. We're thrilled that one of the issue's contributors and cover stars is Terrence McNally, whose life and prolific career we'll be celebrating tonight. For 6 decades, McNally has brought to life both the darkness and light of the human condition in more than 36 plays, as well as librettos for musical theater and opera. Now 80 years old, he is still writing, and a revival of one of his breakthrough works, well deserved. A revival of one of his breakthrough works, 1987's Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, will reopen on Broadway later this spring on May 30th and will star Audra McDonald and Shannon in the title roles. Both of those incredible actors will be joining us on stage tonight. Moderating tonight's event is Galanes. He not only writes the social cues and Table for Three columns for the New York Times, but he also qualifies as something of a Terrence McNally expert, having spent many hours researching and interviewing McNally for an in-depth piece on the playwright's legacy that we published in the back of our culture issue. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Galanes, and our special guests, Terrence McNally, Audra McDonald, and Shannon.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, TimesTalks, and especially T Magazine for giving me an incredible opportunity to talk with Terrence McNally for a big piece in the culture issue. And do not take that invitation lightly. Make sure you get your copy of T Magazine on the way out. It's really, the whole thing is sensational. Let's get to the business at hand. May I have image number 1, please? Terrence.
Oh, so beautiful.
Who is that?
Tell me something about that foxy gentleman. What's his phone number?
I remember that picture.
You do?
Yeah, I was trying to grow a beard. Looked like I had a dirty face from 10 feet away. And I was in Spain, running with the bulls and all that kind of. That's when I thought I was going to be Ernest Hemingway. And I was,
a novelist?
Well, he was my hero. And it was a summer of 2 of the great matadors doing mano a manos all around Spain, and I followed them. And I met Hemingway several times. And I brought home a bloody cape, which is pretty disgusting. I think about it now. But no, I was always drawn to writers, and he was a big hero of mine then. No playwright was at that age. I was pretty young.
How old? Ish.
19, maybe.
You started writing when you were so young, and in our conversation we talked a lot about journalism at the beginning, editing and writing so much of your high school paper, studying journalism at Columbia. But was there always a dream in the back of your head about playwriting or becoming a novelist, or did that unfold over time?
It's a good question, and to be honest, it probably was a dream, and I think I suppressed it because it seemed so bold.
He had his Broadway debut when he was 26, so he was bold is not a big problem for Terrence.
And I always, when I wrote, I had trouble describing what people looked like, what a room looked like, what nature looked like, but I loved the dialogue. And then I was at Columbia. I saw the notice in the paper that no one had written a varsity show, which was a great tradition there, and Rogers and Hart met writing the Columbia Varsity Show. And I said, oh, I'll do that. And it turned out fun, and people laughed, and Michael Kahn directed it, and Ed Clevan wrote
Chorus
it.
line and Clevan?
Yeah, but I still thought I was going to be a novelist, and I went off to Mexico and wrote about half a novel, and I said, this isn't very good. And I wrote the first act of a play, and from then on, pretty much, that's all I've done. But I always thought I'd be a journalist. I was surprised. But I did see really good theater at a very young age. I was brought to New York to see Annie Get Your Gun, not especially for that reason, but I was brought to New York. And I was taken to, and then about 5 years later, I was brought again, and I saw one of the very last performances. No one knew it at the time, of Gertrude Lawrence in The King and I. And even to my 10-year-old ears, her singing seemed even very faltering compared to the recording. And I thought something's wrong. And when she died, it was like, I cried for days. And then on that same trip to Europe, I went to England, and I saw this unknown play to me of Shakespeare called All's Well That Ends Well. And there was this young actress from Australia called Zoe Caldwell. And I was in the last row of the balcony, and she had a scene with Dame Edith Evans, and I said, I want to write plays for people who can speak like that.
Right.
And here are two of them here.
And here are two of them today.
Because I can't do that.
Well, it's very interesting because in our conversation you talked about a strong desire as a young man to have your voice heard. Mm-hmm. And it didn't really occur to me until later that maybe you didn't feel so comfortable doing the talking. And so with Audra, with Michael, with Zoe, with Nathan, Lane, you could have your voice heard that way.
That's it in a nutshell. Because
Okay,
I love
you're
to.
excused.
I love to write dialogue and find the character in the way, and I love the way people behave around one another. Yeah. And I've really had so much good fortune to have a high school English teacher who makes you love literature, and you're not afraid of Shakespeare when you're 14, 15 years old. You know, how often does that happen? And I've always had a lot of good luck. And my second play was directed by Elaine May, and I learned so much from working with her. Yeah. She kept saying, I don't care what they say. What are they doing? Playwright records what people are doing. Dialogue comes easy. She's 100% right. You always get stuck in a scene when they're not doing anything.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
So I had a good teacher.
These two started very young too, younger than 19, and it's sort of my beat at the Times to talk with performers. And a number of young performers are often are drawn to it for, I don't know how to say this right, for corrective purposes. They're really shy. They're really upset about a family event. They're really finding it hard to find their place in their school. And I mean, Audra, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking under 10, younger than 10 when you started?
Yeah, I was 9, yeah.
9?
Yeah.
You just made the cutoff? Single digits?
Yeah.
And Michael, you were about 13 or 14?
Well, the first play I did outside of a school environment would be when I was 15. Yeah.
What do you have any recollection? I mean, in a parallel way with the 19-year-old Terrence, do you have a sense of what was drawing you to it?
Yeah, for me, I came from a super musical family, and so I was always singing, just 'cause everybody in my family sang or played the piano or played an instrument.
It's too bad you're not better at it.
I'm still working on it. Always working. But I was also having a hard time in school, and I was very hyperactive, and I mean, it's not unknown. I've talked about this before. They were considering putting me on Ritalin because I was having such a rough time. And my parents, Ritalin, I think at that time, it was fairly new on the market, back then. And my parents were trying to figure out what to do. Should we put her on this drug? She is having a rough time. She's very hypersensitive, hyperactive, overdramatic. She's not reacting well in situations. And then they went out for their anniversary to a dinner theater in Fresno and saw a group of kids performing before the main stage show. There was these kids that would do a little pre-show cabaret. And they said, well, Audra likes to sing and dance. Maybe we should convince her to audition for this. And so I did. And I did that instead of Ritalin.
That's the best story I've heard today.
Not that, I mean, and I'm not knocking Ritalin for some people. It's the absolute right choice, and for some people, medication is the right choice. But for me, they found something else, and so that's what worked for me.
Yeah. Top that.
Well, I guess when I stumbled into this, I was still living in Kentucky, and most of the boys did sports after school, but I wasn't any good at sports at all. And I was really just looking for something to do after school. I tried a couple other things. Math team, I tried that. I tried the academic team. And then they had this thing called speech team, and they had you could sign up for an audition. I barely even knew what that was, and I went in there, and they're like, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" And they're like, "Do you have a monologue prepared?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Well, tell us a story." And so I made up some baloney story right there on the spot, and they selected me as an alternate for the monologue competition.
I was first cast as an alternate too.
Yeah,
I
as
wasn't
an
the
alternate.
regular.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started as an alternate.
Yeah,
too.
the sub. They
That's-
gave me a snippet from Lake Wobegon Days by Garrison Keillor
Oh my gosh.
called Booger Days. And I memorized it in my bedroom, and I never performed it, ever. The only time they actually called me to compete was in extemporaneous speaking, which is terrifying and has absolutely nothing to do with acting. But yeah, and so from there, eventually I waded into the duet acting category, and I did a little scene from The Body, which is the novella that Stand By Me is based on. I was playing the character River Phoenix played in the movie, and I think when I did that scene, that's when I really, that what you're talking about, that crossover between like, oh, my unhappy life and drama, great, that was the bridge across the troubled waters, as it were. Yeah, was when I was doing that. Although I didn't do it anywhere near as good as River Phoenix did. But yeah, and, it's all very slow. It's like, people always ask, like, when did it happen? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know when it happened. It was just it was like just little pieces here and there, and next thing you know, I'm sitting on stage with these people.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a great thing. Terrence, you never really had to do your Plan B journalism. You never really had to do that. Did either of you have a Plan B? No? Did your...
I was never oriented towards being successful in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't an ambition of mine to be particularly successful in
It's
any
often
way.
our parents' ambition for us, though. And so you avoided, you skirted
Oh,
that.
we deviated from that pretty early on. Me and the folks, we we all knew well enough to just go our separate ways.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's. I would love to introduce you to my mother and father because there is no way you would have deviated from it with them. But let's go. May I have the second still photo, please? This is what brings us here tonight, the second revival of Frankie and Johnny and the Clair de Lune. When I came to New York in 1987, one of the first plays that I saw was this, with Kathy Bates and not F. Murray Abraham, with Kenneth Walsh.
Right.
I guess I missed the moment when
Murray did it briefly. Got a movie or something, you know.
yeah, they'll do that
Not
to
many
you.
people.
They'll do that to you, won't they? It's a very simple. I'm sure most of you have seen it, or if not, are familiar with it. It's a very simple. It's a story that is in Terrence's hands, so poetically and beautifully rendered. It is someone in love and someone resistant to it. And if that hasn't happened to every single person in this room, probably on both sides of the equation, I can't imagine a more universal story. But one of the things that really shocked me when we spoke at your apartment is that you thought, oh, who's going to want to see a couple of middle-aged people who are...
That's exactly what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the audience for this?
Yeah.
But you eventually have to face
No,
reality.
I understand the practicality.
Yeah,
I understand the
and
practicality of it.
I find the more you tell the story you want to tell, the more likely you are to write something meaningful.
This
When
idea,
you think this can't miss, everyone
Yeah.
will want to come see this one. That I've stumbled very badly, I think.
it's
But a play about Maria Callas teaching students to sing Bellini, I thought that'll never be done, so we fortunately got a reading of it in Big Fork, Montana. And they said, do you want to have a discussion? I said, yeah, I think they like the play. Let's find out. The first question was, Miss Caldwell, are you a professional actress? And she said, yes. And they said, you're very good. She said, thank you. They'd never, seen her TV series, I guess. So I thought, this works for this audience. So, and Frankie and Johnny, MPC, they did it. We opened stage 2, the little theater with it. That's when Murray did it. And it went very well. And Lynn Meadow, the artistic director, said, I don't want to have it reviewed now. Let's open the main stage in the fall. It was like in June. We'll open in September on the big stage. And in that period, Murray got a movie, and suddenly we were doing Frankie and Johnny without Johnny.
It's but he still did a beautiful job. I mean.
Oh, he's wonderful. Yeah.
Like so many of the plays that Terrence has done, and that I'm sure many of you know, the idea of longing to connect and the very human resistance that we also have to connecting is so poetically and beautifully rendered in this play. I can't wait to see it. I also can't wait to ask you if you, when you wrote the play, were more identified with Frankie, who is the brakes, or Johnny, who is the gasoline.
Yeah. Absolutely both. It's me.
Yeah.
There's struggles within me, yeah. Identify completely with both of them. Yeah. And I wrote the play rather quickly, as I remember. Some plays come easily, some don't, and that doesn't mean if they come easily, they're better than the ones that you sweat out, or vice versa. So it was just I don't know, it was a strange time in my life. I mean, this was written also, it was a dark time in New York. It was a lot of people saying, I don't want to live here anymore. The crime rate was very high. There were a lot of homeless or beggars, and when you stopped for a red light in your car, someone would smudge your windshield. AIDS was on everyone's mind. And it became a rather frightening city. And it was not a happy time in New York when I wrote it.
It's not a happy play. It's a gorgeous play, and so I think it was probably. I mean, when I saw it, I was very much focused on what you were talking about. Gay men were, people in my community were just dying, right and left, and there was also a kind of stink of disrepute being gay or lesbian, the entire LGBT community. And so I think it was when I saw this play, and certainly when I saw the next play, Lisbon Traviata, that I realized, probably to my parents' chagrin, I wish I'd had yours at the time, that I really wanted a relationship more than I wanted to have a career success. I wanted to be in love more than I wanted to have, more than I wanted to be the Pulitzer Prize winning blah blah of anything. I'm guessing that you may. I mean, given that you've been wildly successful, but that this theme runs so consistently through your work, I'm guessing that we may have been similar in that?
I guess it does run through my work. I also think as we get older, if we have not found that ideal loving relationship, we build more and more armor to protect ourselves. And I think Frankie has built a lot of armor around himself, as I was doing around myself. I think it's a hopeful play. Is it a happy play? I do believe people can find happiness in one room of slender means. I mean, we live now in such a materialistic, it's such a different New York. When this play opened, something like Hudson Yards was inconceivable, such a thing. And now, realistic housing seems inconceivable, just what we need, a luxury place. So the plays do reflect the times you live in.
And yet there's a timelessness about it. In the nuts and bolts of getting, this play is 30 years old, and this will be the third revival, or the second revival, the third major production of it. And we have two major actors. In 2002, two other major actors, Edie Falco and Stanley Tucci, in this production. How did it come together? Was it something that?
As it says in the program, I did a play called Grace on Broadway that Terrence came to see, and the producer on that, Debbie Bisno, once the show closed, I think it was kind of her idea, wasn't it? Debbie said, Mike, I see you in doing this play.
Yep.
And
she calls you Mike?
You can call him, it's funny. You can really call me whatever you want.
Audra, do you call him Mike or Michael?
I call him Mr. Shannon. He wanted to call me.
Well, I tell you what my nickname is at home is Mr. Lady. So that's the truth. Anyway, Debbie said, I was like, wow, okay, and she said, let's just do a reading. Let's do a reading. Okay.
Did you know the play?
I had seen it. I had seen the Steppenwolf production with Laurie Metcalf.
Wonderful production.
And Yasin Panyankov. It was a great production, and I really loved it. And but it had been a while, and I was like, that'd be interesting. So I went over to Terrence and Tom. Jesus Christ, I'm a moron. Sorry, Terrence and Tom. I'm nervous. And we did a reading of the play. And I was like, wow, this is really special. So, and then a few years went by, and now we're doing it. It takes a long time to get something like this to come together.
Yeah.
Were you just an immediate yes?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't involved with when Michael and Debbie and Terrence and Tom did that reading, and I was looking for something different to do post the birth of my child. I knew that whatever the next thing I was going to do on Broadway was going to be, I knew that I didn't want it to be a big splashy musical because I had just done that. And I don't know, I like to change it up. Maybe that's...
Well, I think it's one of the most incredible things about you. If I'm thinking about putting people in boxes, it is impossible to put you in a box. And I'm thinking like, baby doesn't like to be put in a corner.
No.
And because you don't accidentally not ending up in a corner. So I'm assuming that you've been very conscious of
I
it.
have been very conscious about that, but it's nothing that, well, what's the best way to say this? It's something that is instinctual. I didn't set out and sit down with my team and said, now team, let's make sure that, it's just how I am artistically sort of drawn, that I don't want to, I want to continue to do things that scare me and stretch me. So I don't want to do something that I've done before. Not that I'm never going to do a musical again. Of course I want to do a musical. And before I'd done Shuffle Along, before I'd done Shuffle Along, I had done, something that was it a play? Was it musical? It's hard to say what Lady Day was, but it was just me on stage.
Awesome.
And so I was a little lonely. I was like
Awesome.
ready to be on stage with a bunch of people, So anyway, long story short, so I was just looking for something different, and I didn't know quite what it was. And a couple of things had come my way, and I just knew that none of them were it. And Tom, Terrence's incredible husband and the incredible producer, emailed me and said, what do you think about Frankie and Johnny with Michael Shannon? And I just went, that's it. That's it. Literally, it was just like ding, 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 ding. I just knew. So I said yes so quickly before thinking any of it through, for thinking about the nudity or anything. I just said yes. And then I went and read the play again, and I went, oh, right. Okay. But no, I mean, it was just like, for me, any chance to get to be with Terrence and Tom is a joy. And then to get the opportunity to work with, I have to tell you this, at first, I misunderstood the email at first, and at first I thought he said Michael Sheen. And so my yes was because it's Frankie and Johnny, and it's Terrence, and so yes, that's it. And then I remember thinking, I think we'll match up very well, me and Michael Sheen. Do it,
It was Michael Strahan. He's just too damn busy.
He's just too busy, yeah. But then once I, reread, I was like, oh, Michael Shannon, yes. And then it's kind of crazy because on the TV show that I'm doing, they brought Michael Sheen on for this season, and it was like, but then once I found out that I was like, yes, I'm gonna say yes because it's scary, and it's a challenge, and it's a beautiful play.
Yeah.
And Michael and I are deep in rehearsals right now, and it's a hard play to do. It's deceptively simple, right? That's what we decided.
That's what we agreed upon.
Yes.
Yeah.
A two-hander is
true.
hard, but especially a two-hander where there's not a ton of plot.
And one of the things that I always, while I was doing a lot of research about Terrence for Tea, one of the things that it is commonly referred to is it's a naturalistic play. It's a kitchen table play. And I think, well, I've had a fair number of one-night stands, and I don't recall anyone asking me, insisting that we get married the next morning or talking about children. So I'm thinking deceptively simple is a great way to say it. It's also so poetic. It's the lines. You get one of the best lines, I think, in a play, which is, everything I want is in this room. if you can think of a time in your life when everything you want is in the room, right? I mean, not on Instagram, not like, yeah, exactly. So are you checking in on rehearsals, or is it your policy to stay away from rehearsals more?
This is a revival, so we're not doing it for me to rewrite it. If it was a brand new play, I would be there more. I can't write with someone looking over my shoulder saying, ooh, I don't like that word, or she would never say that. And I respect these two. But I did today see a run-through of Act One that could have been opening night on Broadway, and I would have been proud.
Wow.
They are beyond, I mean, we've waited quite a few years to make this combination happen because of various commitments each of them have for other projects. And I said to them afterwards, I'm so glad we waited. And I give Tom credit for that. He said, no, that's the magic combination to do this play. And, you know, plays are really only as good as the cast on stage. I'm a firm believer in that. And it's such a collaboration, except you don't find that many people who hear your music. And when you find them, you are so grateful. Yeah. And the impact of seeing Audra the first time in Carousel was like seeing Ethel Merman. You say, I want this person, and I want to work with this person. I didn't even know her, you know. Well, and then I nervously took her to lunch when we offered her a master class, and I assumed she was a graduate of Juilliard Acting School, and no, she's a graduate of the music department. She's a natural actress. I mean, she gets it. She knows how to be in the moment. And Michael, when I saw him in that play,
Long Day's Journey?
No, the Grace.
You saw.
You just say, that's an actor I want to work with. You know, I get talent crushes on people, and I become pretty insufferable. And then when they turn me down, I'm better at it at 80 than I was at 40. But really hurt feelings, you know.
I think that's the most
Well, if you're going to go and do the David Mamet play. I don't take it too well.
One of the heartbreaks for me about theater is that I can have a magic night and then I don't have a record. There's not a record. And I wonder, is that, I know that one of the great things about doing theater is that that the repetition gives you all an opportunity to fine-tune, to change, to evolve, to keep going, but you rarely get a record of what you're doing. Yeah. Is that a mixed? It would seem to me, as a you know, not involved, that would be a very mixed bag. But do you find it that way? Do you find it difficult, or do you not think about it?
I always find that question funny because there's so many actors that are like in movies and stuff, and they say, "Oh, I don't watch my own movies," so they have a record of it, but they don't even want to see it. So it's like, you know, what difference does it make? I was talking to Bob Dylan's manager once, and he said, you know, Bob doesn't sit around listening to his old records. He doesn't. It's the past is past. It's like it almost doesn't even exist. Right. He's just always focused on, well, what am I going to do now? And it's the same thing, like the work is for the people that are receiving it. You know, I can't even say I honestly get a huge amount of satisfaction out of it because I'm always wanting it to be better than what it is. So it's there's never one of like, oh, I just wish I could freeze that forever, and yeah, you're just always like, oh, okay, I can do better tomorrow night.
So the incredible amount of whining and foot stomping and begging and being a pain in the neck I was for the last 2 weeks to get a tiny clip from Masterclass that we are now about to show you was utterly a waste because neither of them want to see it. But we get to see it. Okay. Please go to the clip. I used to not have gray hair before I started trying to get that clip. It's very, but that play, and when I saw you and Zoe together, what I really wanted was not that. What I really wanted was when she was saying, "You're going to kill the king. How does that make you feel?" And she said, you go, "Happy?" And she says, "Wedding day happy? Falling in love happy?" And you go, "Murder happy." And that was what I really wanted, but
So
that's what I got.
remember it. That's what I love about the theater.
Yeah, that's the
You
best.
had to be there.
That's when you really
That
know
it
it's
was
not having
live.
the recording, but no, when it's living in somebody's head, when they can come up to you and recite it to you 10 years, 15, 20
And
years
also,
later.
I think too, theater, the wonderful thing about theater, I think, because I agree with Michael that you're always working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to go back to all the shows I've done and like fix some things with the character, or I figure some things out months after the show closed. But the great magic of the theater is that at the end of the night, it's gone. It's just sort of there in the firmament, and in your hearts and heads or wherever, in your souls, wherever it landed. And then the next night you get to go back and try again. And if you talk about having to always live in the moment, because that's all you have when it's with live theater. You just have the moment and then it's gone. So as actors, it's great to get the opportunity. When you have a bad show, you can go, okay, well, that's bad. It's not like you do a bad film and go, well, then that's just gone. It's there forever. But if you have a bad night in the theater, he's like, well, there's always Thursday night, or there's always, Saturday matinee to try again and try again.
This is the third Terrence project you have worked on.
No,
Yes.
fourth, but no.
Third
No, I
that's
don't know.
third that's
Ragtime.
gone to that's
Ragtime.
There's Ragtime. There's Masterclass.
Ragtime.
There's
And
Ragtime.
and this.
And there's this.
Yeah, we've done workshops and other stuff, but yes, this is the third. Yeah.
Is there a through line to working with him? Is there something that is there some commonality in working with Terrence McNally material?
I mean, there's my personal relationship with Terrence, which is just, I just love him. He's met I named my daughter, my 18-year-old, I named her Zoe. I named her after Zoe Caldwell. I mean, that's because Terrence brought her into my life. And, he was at my wedding and he knows my little baby. So there's that personal relationship.
Terrence was talking about hearing the music, when people hear the music of his writing.
And
I guess what I was really asking badly was, do you
Yes.
feel confident in hearing his music?
I feel like I feel like Terrence's language is a language that I can comprehend and inhabit. It's a language that I understand. That sounds really weird, but I mean, his poetic language is a language I understand. And I think that is because there is so much music in his language. And I think maybe that's why I find some modicum of success in doing his work. And also because he's so collaborative, too. If he wants you to be comfortable in what you're doing. And I mean, this is a little different because it's a revival, but the other two shows that I worked on with Terrence.
Rewrites and
Yeah, absolutely.
changes.
And but he's not precious about his work either, though. That I don't find.
Well, if people respect my punctuation, I'm really happy. That's all I ask. That's a comma, not a period. Thank you. When you're reading music, you observe, oh, it's a flat, it's a rest, it's an eighth note, it's a 16th note. All I ask is the same respect they show Gershwin and Beethoven. It's amazing how many actors don't. It's there. That's for you. Use it. Don't invent up a new melody. The through line, I feel, working with Audra and just beginning to work with Michael, which I've seen he's made so many movies recently, is a complete honesty in their work. I never see them acting. And that's my favorite kind of actor. They just inhabit. And I love that. And, I do these talent crushes I get on people. I've had my rejections from Miss McDonald, too. A play I wrote about Bellini, the opera composer, and I wanted her to play Maria Malibran very badly. And that didn't work out. And in the opera, Dead Man Walking, I think she'd be the most wonderful Sister Helen Prejean. I still have hopes,
Yeah. We'll get
there. And Michael is someone I would hope this is the beginning of a collaboration. I mean, I'm at an age now where, who knows, but he's my kind of actor. And there's wonderful actors, and I enjoy them, but I don't want to work with them. They're...
When we were talking, you said that, especially as a young guy, you heard voices like Ethel Merman's or Laurence Olivier's in your head when you were writing.
I didn't know a single actor then. I knew some actors at Columbia or in the Varsity Show.
Right.
Well, you don't write for them. You don't hear their
But
voices.
you could imagine their voices.
I could hear their voices saying the lines. And the very first play I did, originally was going to start in London, Things Go Bump in the Night, which ended up on Broadway, not very successful. But Irene Worth read the leading part, and it was like, I love voices. I love opera, so. And people have distinctive voices and use them. And actors who keep their breath up to the end of the sentence, who know they're in I don't like mumbling, at least Strasberg, I think, did the American theater a lot of damage. It just, what, it's very real. Maybe it's real, but I'm sitting in the last row of the balcony. I want to hear, too.
Exactly.
And Laurence Olivier, you always heard him. No matter what, Zoe, you always heard. These two, you hear them. They make you listen to them. I think the human voice is a great instrument. And I love live theater. But it all disappears. But it doesn't. It stays, as Audra said, with the audience who saw it that night. And I love it when people describe experiences they've had in the theater. Oh, you didn't see. Yeah. You should have seen Paul Scofield in this part, or Maggie Smith in that part. And so I did notice the actors that I saw as a child were all women. And, I write a lot of good men's parts, too, I hope. But every child should see someone as good as Annie Get Your Gun and someone as theater savvy as Ethel Merman in their first show. I mean, it really, I got it. This is not the real world. This is sort of what the real world could be, should be, can be. But it was so exciting to go see I'm still excited when the curtain goes up. Yeah. And I hate it when after 5 minutes the balloon starts deflating and I'm the balloon. And but it's hard. It's really hard. It's moment to moment to moment, and so much can go so wrong, so easily. I mean, talking about it is terrifying. I think what you guys did this morning that I was so enamored of, and so we didn't talk about how they did it.
You're talking about a kind of natural collaboration that is probably very much like Quicksilver. I know, Michael, you in one of the I read an interview that you did a long time ago. I read it twice. I read it twice. The first time I thought you were a jerk because you said that actors are just. You said you think your best quality or one of your best qualities as an actor is that you're obedient. Because you said you're acting in service of somebody else's words and doing it the way a director wants to see it. And I thought, oh, that's a lot of false modesty. I don't buy that for a second. And then I realized, no. The reporter just didn't ask the next sensible question, which is, okay, so in the confines of somebody else's words and somebody else's vision for how it should look, what do you bring to it?
Well, rigor. You bring rigor. It doesn't mean, when I
You
say that,
do.
it doesn't mean that I think that everything the writer and the director does or says or thinks is, platinum. You approach it and you really look at it. Because the thing is, without the work that Terrence has done, me and Audra would be on stage going, "Good evening, I'm Michael Shannon. I'm Audra McDonald. Would you like to hear some jokes?" I mean, it's him, but what I'm pursuing isn't just instructions. What I'm really, and this is the reason it's so hard to talk about, is because it's so damn complicated. It's like you're looking at all the little loops that Terrence has put in this tapestry, and you're trying to weave yourself into that tapestry, and you're trying to relate your own life experience to what you think Terrence is talking about and what you think Terrence has gone through to get to the place that he got in order to write this play. And it's like, it's a very quantum thing, I think, but it doesn't, I always have such a hard time when people ask me how I do what I do, because it's just so, there's so much that goes through my mind and through my body when I'm on stage. It's almost like, in the Parallax View or A Clockwork Orange, you're sitting there like that and it's just being bombarded by all these, by your own memories, by cues that you're getting from the writing, by what Aaron, our director, has tried to sculpt and shape. But the only thing I mean when I say that is I'm not up on stage for like the glory of myself to like let everybody, because that doesn't even actually exist. I, in and of myself, am not glorious. What's glorious is seeing people in a harmonic convergence delivering the most fully dimensional depiction of a deep human experience that they possibly can. And the leader of that is, I believe, the writer.
Right. But it was beautifully said, Michael. But to me, playwriting is two dimensions. It's symbols on paper, and they bring the third dimension to it. And a manuscript of a play to me is lifeless. It's the actors who inhabit it. And I think Shakespeare must have had the most wonderful company of actors to write for, to write those glorious plays. I mean, you write King Lear and Cleopatra because there's somebody in your company who can do that, That's why I write for Ethel Merman and Laurence Olivier, because they're the best at their game, People like these two, and they're rare. I mean, it's really special convergences of talent in theater. When it happens, it's so precious and to be celebrated. And sometimes we fail badly.
And it happens a lot
we try.
with you. I'm going to apologize to you folks because I didn't get to the LGBT stuff. I didn't get to, Terrence created space for gay men and women, and I didn't get to the opera, and I've got his musicality. We've got 10 minutes left, and you are entitled to ask questions. So we're going to do something funky with the lights that I didn't quite follow. You raise your hands, please, and then I'll call you, and somebody will run a microphone up to you. Just please, if it's possible, ask a question, and we won't be doing hugs or autographs. I don't see a damn hand. Okay, I see a hand. Come on, all the way in the back.
If anyone has any comments about the movie production of Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, or am I not allowed to bring it up? Because I thought
How dare you, madam?
Sorry, because I thought
No,
it was.
of course you can bring it up.
It's fine. And all I remember is one day that box that they put the film in at the end, that silver box. And Michelle Pfeiffer said to me, "There goes my performance." And there was like 11 takes. Someone else would choose.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest difference. And the other quick story, a friend of mine said, "I can't wait for you to see the movie. When I get this news on the phone, the way I hang up the phone is everything I've wanted to achieve as an actress." So I go to see the movie. She answers the phone, "Yes, cut." And it was that, the way she put the phone down. This was Christine. Yeah, in that movie about the woman who was in a coma for years, Sunny.
Oh, Van Bulow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she was so proud. She was the mistress. And just someone else could just cut that. The theater you can't do unless they leave the stage. You're stuck with them for both acts. So, thank you for the question.
Yes, please.
When you talked about hearing things in your head but not really visualizing things, and why the theater is better and easier for you to write, when it goes from page to stage and you see set decoration and lighting and makeup and actual human beings, are you ever startled? Do you find something in it that you hadn't seen before? Or do you ever go, "A redhead? No, that's so wrong"?
Yes, I've been very dismayed, but the actors I like writing for make it so much better than I thought I had. It's such a gift. They add something so special that even I can't imagine until I hear Audra and Michael actually do the act today. They startled me so many times with the freshness of interpretation, and it's thrilling. I don't want to see the same production repeated over and over, which is very often what you get when you go to theaters outside of New York. So I learned from a great actor, and I worship great actors. I really do.
Hello.
Hi.
I would love to hear about your rehearsal process and what that's really been like with such a vulnerable, open play.
Do you want to?
It seems like we started with very practical concerns, I remember. The first day it was about like, where's all your stuff and where are you going, and like making the sandwiches, like starting with the real kind of tactile, not highfalutin stuff, but just the practical
all the
stuff.
business of it, for sure. And we did was it a workshop? I don't know what you'd call it. What we did in the falls, where we sat, around a table. We never got up from the table for 2 weeks, and we just sort of read the play and talked about the characters and where it came from in Terrence's mind, where he was when he emotionally when he wrote the play. I think we should talk about Clair. Should we talk about Clair?
Oh yeah, Clair.
Yeah. So Clair. We want to talk about Clair. That's the other character. It's this new character. No.
Clair de Lune.
Oh, I just
Clair de Lune.
spotted.
Yes. What's different, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that they've existed much before now, but we're in the era of Me Too and whatnot, and this play deals a lot with consent throughout the play. But because it's such a vulnerable play, not only for the characters, but for the actors having to, with the nudity and the graphic sexuality and whatnot. So the company has hired an intimacy director for us, which has been, I think, really helpful. She's given us the space. She's made it a safe space for us. She's gotten consent from both of us, as she calls it. Nothing can happen without enthusiastic consent from both of the actors of how far you can, whatever that is, what you're allowed to touch, what you're not allowed to touch. And she's made she's made the rehearsal space and those moments a very safe space to play, so that we can be vulnerable and know that we're safe and know that we're all on the same page. It's all been choreographed. And as she calls it, you tap in and then go to that place to play, and then you tap out at the end and say, all right, we leave all that here. So it's a new thing, I think, that's starting to happen more. I know they've just, producers and directors have just had a meeting about bringing more intimacy directors on. Because before that, you were just kind of fumbling, trying to figure it out, and you don't know where the line is, or where it's drawn, or where not, where, you know, someone might be uncomfortable, but who do you talk to about it, you know, or so now, you were stuck, but this way we can be vulnerable, I think. I'm doing all the speaking, he's not consistent. But I think we can be vulnerable because we've been given a safe place to do it.
No, yeah, it was a huge relief when Claire came to the rehearsal. Because before that, we would get to those sections, it would just be kind of like, all right, at some point, we're gonna...
Good question.
It's the first Broadway show to use an intimacy.
Yeah. And she happens to be our fight director as well, so there you go. They're very closely aligned.
Love that.
Last question, and I see it, such an enthusiastic hand, please.
Audra, if you had your choice, what Broadway musical would you like to star in?
Gypsy. Please.
Gypsy? Well, Gypsy is like, you know, the Lear for, seriously, that's the Lear in musical theater canon for women. That's Lear, so who knows? I mean, that'd be fun. That'd be fun, or I'd like to be Sweeney in Sweeney Todd. Literally Sweeney. You'd be a good Sweeney. You'd be a great Sweeney.
That was fast, so we have time for one more.
20 years ago in Irvine, Berkeley, remember Audra and Marcy?
Oh, yes.
And I was sitting near your mother, and she said, I told you to wear a dress
I had worn pants.
and pants. And today she would be proud. And you look more beautiful than ever after going through a pregnancy now.
Oh, goodness. Well, you're very kind. Thank you.
Not the way I thought it would end, and yet, I thank you all for coming out. And thank you, Audra. Thank you, Michael. And especially, thank you to Terrence McNally. And please don't forget to take your copy of T Magazine on the way out. It's awesome.
You're right on the money.
Are you